Welcome to Inventiveminds Child, Youth, and Family Support Center. We are a not-for-profit organization working with families in their day-to-day parenting by providing workshops and seminars related to pediatric and child development. Inventiveminds provides care in the early years sectors for newborn to age 6, licensed under the Ministry of Education all across Ontario. Inventiveminds cares an elementary school open to international students from junior kindergarten to grade 3. The Inventiveminds Family Center helps families in mediation, arbitration, and parent coordination cases related to family separation and divorce. We support families during and past separation and divorce. Inventiveminds works with court orders to conduct child voice report and parenting courses related to CAS, court, and mediation purposes. To learn more about our services, reach us at InventiveKidz.com.
Thank you so much for joining this Inventiveminds Child, Youth, and Family Support Center workshop. Today's workshop topic is entitled Benefits of a Child Voice Report versus Closed Child Mediation in Court Procedures. Today, we have with us Rose Morrish. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rose.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me. I do want to inform that Inventiveminds, we are not-for-profit, as you indicated, and part of what we do is also we do child voice reports and we do closed child mediation. So what we're discussing today is service that we provide within.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. We should also talk about some of the experience you have being 20 years in child development and having a bachelor's in child development, RECE, parent practitioner and family mediator. You also specialize in working with infancy to teens, and you are the director of operations for Inventiveminds Child, Youth, and Family Support Center.
Yes.
So I know there's going to be a lot of questions regarding this topic for sure, and we'll try to get to all of them, but I also want to make sure that we get to all of our other questions because these questions that I have in front of me quite potentially will answer any questions that you may have as well. So Before we get into anything in particular, first of all, I think it'd be important to clarify what is a child voice report and what is closed child mediation?
So the child voice report is recommended in the mediation process, arbitration process. It is sometimes ordered through the judge in the court. It is basically a statement from the child about how they feel and getting a child voice into the court system or into the mediation system or arbitration system. Normally, the child voice report can start as early as age 7 to 18. Both parents need to give consent in the report, and the child is seen individually by the child voice practitioner. That way, they do the questionnaires and they move forward. There is consent provided not just to the parents, also it is provided to the child to sign. The 2 visits cannot be done with the same parent. It has to be done with separate parents. If there is some form of CAS claim or a child is not seeing another parent or is not comfortable with that other parent, normally there is a plan made by the court or by the lawyers that everyone understands that this child, for example, is not comfortable with the father or the mother. At that time, they will look at, is there someone from the father's side that can bring the child.
Okay. And when you were talking about CS, you're referring to the Children's Aid Societies.
Yes.
There's more questions pouring in here. If the OCL is already involved, can I ask for a child voice report to be done?
They may conduct it or they may not. You may need to seek it independently. It really depends for circumstances and situation that you're involved in that I cannot address.
And also we have somebody asking from the States if CAS is similar to CPS or DCS.
It's like Children's Aid Society here, so you can refer to them, see if they do it. If not, they can assist you with that.
And somebody was also asking, is this regional or state-specific laws or regulations to be aware of? I would imagine there would be.
And we are strictly focusing in Ontario. I do know that in different provinces is done differently as well, even within Canada. If you have a question here, I'm just going to look at it. How is this different from the Office of the Children's Lawyer, social being involved? It is different. Child voice report can be done by a social worker and it can be done through CAS. Normally, if a child voice report has been conducted within a year, we do not conduct another one. But many places in the mediation, arbitration process and court system recommend to get their own child voice report. So you can also seek it independently. So that is a child voice report, which is open. That can be used in court matters, let's say in 6 months, you're going to court process because it was an open report. It can be used at any time. Just moving on, your next question was, what is closed child mediation?
Yeah, please.
Anything discussed in closed mediation is confidential and cannot be taken to court and processes. Normally, closed child mediation is used when there is a change of material in the parenting or child has grown from one development milestones to another. When we talk about change of material, we're discussing a move. So instead of parents seeking arbitration or seeking litigation processes through court, sometimes parents decide to use these matters more in a mediation process where there's not that much of a high conflict, where individuals are able to communicate more effectively with each other. Closed child mediation has some of the scenarios of questionnaires of child voice report, but it's very closed and it's only the things that a child wants, it is discussed and comes out in the mediation process. So we sit down with the child with the consent of the parent and the consent of the child, and they ask series of questions, and the child informs of the things that they're comfortable with, and then we take it to the mediation session. And it's very interesting how sometimes when you hear it from a child perspective, how the parents' views also change, because sometimes we feel, probably because of my ex, my child doesn't want to move. Where you find out, no, it is maybe something that the child doesn't want to, because they have their voice. Or sometimes there's conflict with parenting time. The children have had adolescents. They have their own friends. They do want to see both parents, but not as much as we want to see them. So we need to give them that respect of personal space. That's why normally closed child mediation you find them to be more of a norm in children that are heading adolescence and when there is change of material, like a move.
It sounds like in both scenarios, you're talking about the same sort of issues, but in one, information is being brought to court. A judge is being made aware of all the information discussed between the child and whether it's a psychologist or a child voice assessor or mediator or whoever. But in closed child mediation, it's just more that information is being discussed within the family. Am I getting that right?
Yes and no. The child voice report is done when there's a high conflict. The high conflict can be because the individuals are not in a litigation process in a court order, or they're using an arbitrator. Arbitrator is a private court system. They're looking at the child voice. A lot of times in Ontario now, because of the change of the bylaws coming from March, the child voice has become very important. So many cases before opening a file, the judge asks for child voice report.
Gotcha.
It is not just the parent's perspective, so they want to hear the child's voice. With the closed child mediation, there is no high conflict. It is being resolved through a mediation process.
Right.
That's where the difference comes in.
So that helps. That's great.
Let me just answer this question about the special need children. So with special need children, that's where sometimes is not even the child voice report they will look at. That's when you're going to go to a higher level. It's called parental assessment, where part of that has a child voice depending to the level of special need on the child. We also do that at Collaborative Mediation Law and at Inventiveminds. That can be done privately. The arbitrator will say, before making a decision, I need to see a parenting assessment. So that's a different report when it comes to children that are a special need.
Okay, great. There's a lot of benefits of a child voice report versus a closed mediation. Perhaps this would be a good time to discuss some of those benefits.
When we talk about the child voice report or closed child mediation benefits, it's about getting the child voice in. It's important as a parent to take a step back, be more of a listener, to hear what your child has to say. Right. And normally when families are going through a high conflict separation or remediation, it's a very hard emotional time for everyone involved. From the individuals that had this relationship together, there's a lot of hidden feelings. And with that, we're not recognizing at times what kind of dynamic that is bringing into our household and how our children are feeling.
Right.
Through the child voice report, we're hearing the child's voice. In many cases, we might notice that there are some red flags where the child may even need some support emotionally that maybe parents have not seen, because sometimes they see themselves responsible, or they feel like they have to favor one parent over another because they feel the other parent is alienated. They feel sad for the other parent, where they themselves might be feeling a lot of things. Sure. Sometimes when there's that whole fight over the overnight, and when you look at a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old, they're really not getting a voice, that they're tired, that this is not working out for them. Maybe it's working out for the parents. It's not really working out for the child. That's why even through the litigation and arbitration process, now they want you to first seek mediation before even going to that kind of high conflict.
Sure. In many different situations where parents are splitting up and they're going their own way and they're going to conduct life differently than before, there can be a lot of circumstances can make it very difficult for them to see how it's affecting their child, because they're under a lot of stress and things can be quite challenging in those types of moments. And this gives the opportunity for a child to just have someone to speak to and speak their mind and have their voice heard. And also potentially it gives the opportunity for that voice to be verbalized in a way that a child would not necessarily be able to verbalize it, as well as having help from somebody.
Yeah. And again, it's giving parents a different perspective to look at things. And It's very important that parents recognize when these closed child mediations are done, or these child voice reports are completed and it is being shared, that children do not feel alienated after, where they feel that they've been picked and chosen. That's a feeling we want to definitely avoid. We want them to give them that comfort level that they need, the safe place that they needed to have these conversations.
Let's talk about in what circumstances would a child voice report be used. I mean, I know, again, we touched upon this already, but is there any other sort of depth that you wanted to make sure that you addressed?
Really, as discussed, it is used in court processes, it is used in litigation processes, it is used in arbitration processes. It is used in children aid service processes, but when it comes to CAS, it is conducted by CAS as itself, not through independently. A child voice report can actually be done for a mediation as well. If the report is done within a year and there is no substance changes, we don't want to keep on putting the children in that kind of place. If we don't want to target the children every 6 months, asking them the same questions over and over, it's not emotionally healthy for them. The questions are done in a professional way where the child feels safe and comfortable to talk about how they feel. Sometimes, if a child has special need, the child voice report can also be done through play concept. And also we need to look at the level of their abilities. Do they have the cognitive ability? Because you could have a 7-year-old where it has a cognitive level of a 14-year-old, where you have a 14-year-old who's not able to do a child voice report. So those are certain things that we assess before moving forward. If a child has severe anxiety, are we going to do a child voice report? There's so many things. And again, with the child voice report, the child has the ability to talk about what they want to be said in the report and what they do not want to share in the report. So they may tell the practitioner certain information, but they ask for that not to be shared.
Fair enough. That helps a lot. Let's talk about the term parental assessment. Is it the same as closed child mediation?
Normally, parental assessments are recommended by court order when there's a very high conflict situation where parents have a very toxic relationship among each other, where they use the child as a weapon against one each other. It could be that one parent might be bipolar or narcissist, where there's some mental health issues in there, or maybe it's just a very highly conflict situation where they use mediation, where they use many different resources and they have not been successful. So when a parental assessment is done, normally it takes 4 to 5 months for it to be conducted. At Inventiveminds, we conduct the parental assessment. We collaborate with a doctor. They cannot be done by just a practitioner. They interview people that know the parents. They actually observe the parent with the child. They do child voice report in it as well. So child voice report becomes 1/4 of the assessment.
Just a small part of it.
And then what happens with that parental assessment that is conducted, sometimes the court will order parent coordinator, which is called a PC, which again, we provide that Inventiveminds as well. So we're really child focused. We focus on family mediation, family arbitration, mediation arbitration, child voice, closed child mediation, parental assessment. Those are some of the services we provide.
Nice. Okay, great. Now, also somebody here is asking if a child voice report has to be court ordered.
A child voice report does not have to be court ordered. You may decide with your partner to do a child voice report, then you go to a mediation process. So that child voice report can always also be used in court. Does not necessarily need to be closed because you got a child voice report done in open mediation process.
But I would imagine if the parents decide that they come to an agreement, they'll have a child voice report done and it will be made available through court proceedings. I would think that would be looked upon favorably. Yes. I would think so. It would show cooperation and that, the child's voice is important to the parents and all that kind of stuff. So
exactly. That's why the judges ask for it. From my understanding, some judges, if the child voice report is not on the file, they don't want to even look at the file anymore. So it really depends who you're getting. It's better not to go through the court because it's more costly, there's more litigation, there's more argument, high conflict. But if you go through a mediation, you're doing the same thing that is being done in court, but you get a better result because you're not hitting that high conflict. That's why you find the court asks you, have you sought mediation before coming to court? Because not only you have to pay for the court time, you have to pay for the lawyers. There's a lot of costs combined to it. And sometimes when these files goes into the court system, they can last for 3-4 years. The person's whole house, maybe value of asset was 100K. That 100K end up being invested into the court orders. They're going to come out owing to the lawyers and to the court. While going through the mediation, that's the process you're eliminating. So the funds can go to your child. If you do the child voice report open, you can later also take that into mediation. Then you don't need to do a closed child mediation. You have the voice report, and then parents can do their mediation having the child voice report.
Gotcha. How can someone obtain the kind of reports and services we're discussing today?
If individuals are seeking for child voice report, we can all go online and Google and through the directory and find different places that might be doing them. But definitely at Inventiveminds, we have a very child-friendly environment. These reports can actually be done virtual as well. Does not have to be in person. And a lot of things are now done on Zoom too. So mediations can be conducted in Zoom. Court processes are being conducted in Zoom. Child voice is being done in Zoom. And I have another question.
We have someone saying here, I am in a high conflict 5-year separation. We have completed all levels of court and not closer to completion. Next level of court is trial. Is it feasible to try mediation and a voice report if my ex agrees?
Yes, definitely. I highly recommend before moving it to trial, you can ask for moving to the mediation process before trial. You can still do that. You need to have both parents' consent. In this case, your lawyer can message his lawyer to see if you guys can seek mediation before moving forward. You can meet the mediators with your lawyers. So he has his lawyer and you have your lawyer when you're meeting the mediator. And then you can do the same thing with the child voice report or the closed child voice report.
Okay, fair enough. Somebody who's saying here, based on my experience as a domestic mediator, most couples agree on more things at the beginning of mediation than they are aware of. Certainly, yeah. And we've done a few podcasts where we've had mediators come on and mention that it's actually quite interesting to see that when couples sit down with a mediator, they end up discovering in many circumstances that they actually have a lot in common with their belief system and with the way that they want to do things. And then they realize, and it can be hard to realize that in situations where things are high conflict, because if you're really disagreeing heavily and you have a lot of conviction in that one particular issue in two very different ways, then it can be very easy to think to yourself, well, we just disagree on everything.
And that's where the good mediator comes in. So a good mediator normally reflects back on what brought these two individuals together. And a lot of time when there's those high emotions, it's just like that elephant in the room or that iceberg. There's a lot of things underneath it. But normally, because we were talking about child voice report, it's different than closed child mediation. Normally, when it's a court order, that's where a lot of times people do the child voice. And unfortunately, at that point, there's a litigation. So if we can take it away before heading to trial and move it into a mediation process, that would be great.
For sure. And both parents need to consent to undertake the process of child voice report.
And then what happens is we share that information to both parents of what the child said. There has been some cases where one parent just don't want to hear it, which is fine, but they've given consent for it to be shared, and then it is shared.
Now, also, from your experience, Rose, do mediators get involved with the finances and financial situation as well? Yeah.
Sometimes you can go through the court in-house mediators if there's a legal aid available. So based on your family income, your mediation can go somewhere between $25 to $75 an hour. In our institution, because we are not for profit, we do charge a very low fee as well. Mediator can charge between $250 an hour to $75 an hour. If you get legal aid, you can get $25 an hour. So really depends your income. But the child voice report, it's very different than a mediation. It's a totally different report on its own, has nothing to do with mediation. And normally that is somewhere between $150 to $250 an hour. You're looking at a 10 hour.
Right, 10 hours. Okay. Also, we're being asked here, what sort of questions would make sense to ask a mediator that they were considering working with?
It is good to have both people having representatives. Sometimes in mediation, the representatives, which would be the lawyers, may decide not to be, and just the two partners are. It really depends per situation, and each case is different.
And also, I'd imagine that your lawyers would also have some good ideas of some questions to ask a mediator. One person's questions could be vastly different from another. Now, also, I mean, I know we're kind of wrapping up.
Yeah, just want to say something. So the mediators unbiased. So they're a very neutral party. They're looking at facts and they're supporting both parties to take away the conflict. When you go through the lawyer is representing each individual separately. That becomes litigation process where it can turn into the court process where you're at.
I know that we're wrapping up here in terms of time. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of address before we finish up for today?
Remember that our children are not the tug of the war.
They are really, you have if you have children, they should be really the primary focus.
Exactly.
And want to figure out a way to make things as easy on them as possible, because seeing parents parting ways is just difficult, no matter how easy you try to make it. So show strong conflict resolution skills as best as you can. It takes two people, of course, to figure that out. But they should not be pawns in an emotional chess game. That's very well said, George. I want to thank you, Rose, for your time today. So happy to have all of you listening in to this. Thank you so much for joining us today. You can reach out to Rose with her email address, inventivekidz with a Z at gmail.com. Of course, I want to thank you all for joining this Inventiveminds Child Youth Family Support Center workshop. Visit www.inventivekidz, again with a Z.com, to learn about the many other workshops that Rose was just going through with all of you. You can check out a replay of this and many of our other podcasts by searching Inventive Kidz, again with a Z, on YouTube, and the Parent Toolbox on Spotify. And join the Parent Toolbox Facebook community group today by searching the Parent Toolbox on Facebook. And thank you, Rose, very much. Thank you all for being here. And I'm sure we'll see you all again for another workshop very soon.
Very soon. Thank you.